Council for Monday, July 15th, 2024, will please come to order. Good evening. Those of you who are in attendance, welcome. If you would, please take a moment to check your cell phone or your speaker at the desk and make sure that it is on silent or vibrate. And for those of you participating remotely, we welcome you as well. Members of the public are asked to place their microphone on mute during the meeting with the exception of any public hearing. At the appropriate point in the public hearing, I will invite the public to unmute the microphone for purposes of submitting any comments they may wish to make, one person at a time. All persons wishing to make public comments will be asked to first state their name and address for the record, and then after completing the comment, members of the public are once again asked to place their microphone on mute. We thank you all for your cooperation this evening. With that, if you would, please join us in rising for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Hazen?
Here.
Mrs. Volker?
Here.
Mr. Carroll?
Here.
Mr. Benicki?
Here.
Mr. Emmons?
Here.
Ms. Hahn?
Here.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Here.
Mr. Violi?
Here.
Mr. Hixenbaugh?
Here. Approval of the minutes of our regular meeting of July 1st, 2024. Are there any additions or corrections? Then hearing none, the minutes will stand approved as received from the clerk's office. Petitions, communications, remonstrance, and memorial.
Yes, Mr. President, we have a letter from the Board of Zoning Appeals regarding their recommendations from their July 9th meeting. Honorable members, a regular meeting of the Mishawaka Board of Zoning Appeals was held on the above referenced date, at which time the following use variances were considered. Appeal number 2024-25, an appeal submitted by MCC Self-Storage LLC and Morris Sales Inc., requesting a use variance for 940 East 12th Street to allow for 2 permanent storage containers for fireworks. The board, with a vote of 2 to 1, provided no recommendation. Appeal number 2024-27, an appeal submitted by John and Rosemary Shea Trust, requesting a use variance for 314 Cleveland Road to allow tattooing services. The board, with a vote of 3 to 0, recommended approval. This is signed by Donna Burkett, Administrative Planner.
Thank you. This evening, we have no report of any special committee, so we'll move into ordinances on first reading.
Proposed ordinance 2024-20, an ordinance amending ordinance 5868, fixing the salaries of all employees of the city of Mishawaka, except for Mishawaka Park Department, elected officials in the Mishawaka Utilities for the city of Mishawaka, Indiana, for the year beginning January 1st, 2024. This is in the police department in the amount of it's in the police department services division director.
Proposed ordinance 2024-20 will be assigned to the Budget and Finance Committee. Resolutions.
Resolution R 2024-14, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, introducing an ordinance for annexation, adopting a written fiscal plan, and a definite policy for annexation for the property located at 55770 Fur Road and 55721 Clover Road in Mishawaka, Indiana, 46545, east side of Fur Road, approximately 1,200 feet north of East McKinley Avenue.
Thank you. We will now open the public hearing on proposed resolution 2024-14. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, please come forward. Good evening, Mr. Prince.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. Ken Prince, Director of Planning and Community Development for the city. As you know, with every annexation, the city is required to prepare a fiscal plan identifying the potential cost of services and capital expenditures that would be undertaken by the city as part of providing service to the area being annexed. Every annexation that comes in, we distribute the request to all applicable departments. In this case, as is fairly common, that the expenses of the additional property can be handled within the existing budgets, and there are no capital expenditure required of the city as a result of the annexation. All the cost to provide utilities and services would be borne by the developer. The area in question is roughly 20 acres. It's on the east side of Fur Road, across from the Preserve Apartments. The area, again, a quarter-mile north of McKinley. The challenge for the developer is the most expensive one is to serve it with sewer services. because the preserve is actually fed from the west. It's not fed from Fur Road. So this will likely require the construction of a lift station and extension of sewer, which they are aware of as part of providing services to the request. I would also note that per state law, every annexation has to be at least 12.5% contiguous to city limits. This property is 20.4% contiguous. A concern that was brought up at the public hearing was access to Clover Road. This includes a section of property that extends toward Clover Road. What we've identified at the hearing was that it is likely that we will push, because Clover Road is such a substandard county road, but we do feel that there's benefit to provide access, at least for emergency service personnel, that we want to work with the developer to provide a crash gate essentially at that location. So normal traffic would not follow in and out of Clover Road, but that will be yet to be determined. The first step in the process is the annexation. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have on the request.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Prince? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the proposed proposed resolution? If you would, please come forward. Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone with us this evening who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come forward. And is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition? Are there any council members who wish to speak? If not, then I call for the question.
Question.
Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mrs. Hazen?
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Bednicki?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hahn?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes.
Mr. Hixenbaugh?
Yes.
Proposed resolution passes 9-0. Resolution R 2024-15, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, approving a petition of the Mishawaka Board of Zoning Appeals for the property located at 940 East 12th Street. This is a use variance to allow for 2 permanent storage containers.
Thank you. We will now open the public hearing on proposed resolution 2024-15. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, please come forward and begin by stating your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Council. My name is Joshua Visser. I'm a lawyer at South Nussbaum, Nabnet, and Kazmarek. Our office is at 210 South Michigan Street in South Bend. I'm here tonight because one of our clients is Morris Sales, Inc., and they own the property at 940 East 12th Street. At that location, there's a fireworks store that's been in operation. And to give you a little bit of background.
Counselor, if I could interrupt you.
Thank you.
Could you try to do the best that you can to speak into the microphone, because there are some council members who are having trouble hearing you?
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you. The property at 940 East 12th Street is currently zoned C1, which does not permit accessory buildings or outside storage containers. There is a fireworks store that's currently operating at that location and has been for some time. We propose that there's a use variance to place up to 2 storage containers outside the store. 2 steel storage containers. There's shipping containers about 40 feet by 8 feet by 10 feet. The building at 940 East 12th Street is about 1,500 square feet. It's 36 feet by 43 feet, and it is a fireworks store, and it has a fireworks permit from the Indiana Department of Homeland Security, the Division of Fire and Building Safety. Some permits that are issued by the state have limits on the amount of fireworks that can be there, and they have a pound restriction. Some of them are 1,000 pounds. We have an unlimited license at that location because of the fire suppression system in the building and such, that we've gone forward with the state fire marshal, and the local fire department. And so the building is subject to the inspection of both the state and the city fire. A fire marshal in Mishawaka brought it to our attention and recommended that it would actually be safer if we had storage containers outside the building to store inventory in. Currently, all the inventory is inside the small building, and he recommended that it be stored outside. So then we took steps to seek that to seek that use variance. On July 9, the Department of City Planning issued a staff report, and in there they recommended in favor of the variance, and they did note 5 conditions or things that they would like to see happen if they were recommending it. One was installing slats in the existing fence that would be between the storage containers and the road on East 12th Street. The second thing they said was that they didn't want to see the steel storage containers stacked on top of one another, and there'd be a limit of 10 feet, one storage container. Third, they asked that the containers be labeled with a sign that says explosives. Fourth, they wanted to make sure that there was a permit from the state. So this would only occur if, in fact, it was approved by the Department of Homeland Security and there was a fireworks permit for this location. And fifth, they wanted to make sure that the location of the storage containers would allow the fire department to have access to the area if they ever needed to be there. In particular, the staff had checked with the Mishawaka Fire Marshal, and he was in favor of the variance request. The fire department set forth 3 different recommendations for locations of the storage containers, and we'd prefer the first option, which was the storage containers are piggybacked right behind one another. And last week on July 9, as you just heard, this matter went before the Board of Zoning Appeals, and there was a 2-to-1 vote in favor of the use variance, so there was no recommendation to this council because there was a 2-to-1 vote. After the meeting last week, I contacted the fire marshal to confirm my understanding of several reasons why he would recommend that there be storage containers there rather than storing all the inventory in the store. And he confirmed that that was accurate. And also, he was kind enough, I sent him an email outlining the reasons why he said that he would recommend. And I submitted that to him actually today. In response, I did receive an email from him confirming. He was actually had a vacation day, but he was kind enough to email confirming that was accurate. I provided that email to the city clerk, and I'm hoping that you have a copy, but if anybody doesn't have a copy, I brought copies with me as well. The fire marshal was in favor of the use variance because he believes that moving the inventory out of the store and into the shipping containers is much safer for emergency responders, limiting how much fireworks are actually in the store, safer for the building and neighboring buildings, safer for anybody who may be in the building. Also, these storage containers are steel and would do a better job of containing whatever, if there was an accident, whatever happened with the fireworks. The building does have a fire suppression system, which is wonderful and helpful if there is an accident, but it'd be better yet, in my understanding, is to have it in a steel structure contained where it wouldn't get out and spread to buildings that are made of various other materials. The proposed location that the fire department mentioned will allow them to have access. Also, their proposed location provides space in between the building and the container so that there's space there with regard to if anything got too hot, it would be safer to have the storage containers not right on the outside of the building, but with some air around them. And the fire marshal's recommendations, he said, were even more stringent than the recommendations that are set forth by the Indiana Department of Homeland Security, the division for which we approved for the permit. But he made certain recommendations, which are included in the staff report, to address his safety concerns. At the meeting for the Board of Zoning Appeals, there was discussion by a neighbor, some concern about whether or not this would attract criminal activity or thieves or theft or anything in the area. And first of all, I'd like to note there's no evidence of thieves trying to get in the fireworks store. I mean, it's clearly marked fireworks, and they haven't had a problem in the store. There's no evidence that they would, somehow the storage containers would increase any risk there. But more importantly, the storage containers would be locked. They would be behind a 6 to 8 foot fence that's between the storage containers and East 12th Street. And with the staff's recommendation, we agreed that we should put slats in that chain link fence to reduce visibility from the road. In addition, that fence has a gate where the fire department would access. That gate is locked. In addition, the storage containers themselves would be locked. Also, my client would put 2 cameras on the storage containers and have access to those cameras via his cell phone so that he could monitor that activity if any did occur. In addition, there's a utility pole near the position of the storage, proposed position of the storage containers, and there are lights off the utility pole to keep the unit lit. On the other side, on the building, there's also a light that shines light out. And also the neighboring building at 1010 South Merrifield, there's also a security camera on that building that shines to the lot where the storage containers would be contained. I'm not sure whether or not that camera would pick up any activity, but again, that's the neighbors. In addition, at the meeting last week, there was a letter of remonstrance that was sent in and with regard to the neighbor at Builders Ironworks, Inc. And so I believe you all have a copy of that letter too. The letter talks a lot about whether or not fireworks have been lit in the past in this area. And I will say that fireworks have occasionally been lit from the premises right next to the fireworks store for demonstration purposes. I'm also told that even after the meeting we had last week by my client, that fireworks were lit off by Builders Ironworks next door the day after we had the meeting. So I think you're going to hear both ways that fireworks are being lit off. And one thing I'd like to say about that is the use variance that we're requesting, again, is for these storage containers. There's other rules and guidelines that in ordinances possibly that the city has that governs whether or not the fireworks can be lit and limitations on that. What we're here for tonight, in my view, is the use variance request for these storage containers. So regardless of how that's determined, it doesn't affect whether or not people are lighting off fireworks and pointing the finger at one another. And we'd like to work with one another and to be good neighbors, not to cause any unnecessary disturbances. But that issue alone isn't what we believe is before the council tonight. So in conclusion, the fire safety seemed to be the one common thing that anybody I've talked to has mentioned, that's one thing that everybody just wants to make sure that safety is looked out for. No doubt that was our client's concern. That's how we, after speaking with the fire marshal, that's why we even petitioned for this request. And during the meeting last week, there was also some unrelated YouTube videos and power tool demonstration shown by some of the neighbors. If they use any of those methods or means tonight, I would just want to point you back to the safety issue. We've reached out to the fire marshal. We tried our hardest to do the best with what he wanted. I've tried to give you a detailed list of some of the reasons or some of his thinking. He's an expert, so he knows it far better than I. But that's what we're kind of pointing to. We were trying to do the safe thing, trying to comply with the fire marshal's recommendations, and that's why we're here tonight. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Mr. Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. President. Question we had about inventory. Is this going to be full inventory in these things all year long, or is this just overflow inventory leading up to the holidays?
So I believe, Michael, I mean, the push with the inventory, I would think, my understanding is there'll be less inventory there year-round, because this is extremely seasonal, but that they would be there year-round and could be used for storage purposes year-round for the fireworks. So I think the level in there will fluctuate and be lower in the off-season, or the down season, but we are requesting year-round with the storage containers. Yes. Does that answer your question?
I think so, yeah. I just think we're trying to get a mental picture here if this is going to be chock full, floor to ceiling of explosives all year round, or if this is just, there's a few boxes in there and, random months that aren't close to holidays, or, that's the kind of thing I think we need to know.
Right. My understanding is, no, not that it's going to be chock full. We wouldn't want to carry that inventory after the busy time of the season anyway. But we likely won't have sold all of our inventory, so there will be, less there, and yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Evans.
Thank you, Mr. President. On your, you say you're piggybacking the two containers in the storage area, is that correct?
Correct.
When you piggyback them, are they going to be stacked with the front, both facing 12th Street? The doors?
My understanding, if they're piggybacked, so if they're piggybacked, their backs would be together, and so one door would be facing 12th Street, and the door of the other container would be facing the opposite way, if that makes any sense.
My question is, if they weren't, what the spacing was between them. Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Mrs. Volker.
Thank you. Thanks for your presentation. I guess I have a couple questions. I was reading the remonstrance letter, and in the remonstrance letter, it said that this business is only open part of the year. Is that the case, that the store is closed during parts of the year?
My understanding, it's still open. It's not open the same amount of hours
Okay.
as in July and June. And so it wouldn't be open the same amount, but still would be open. And there's, year end and such, sales might pick up and such, but that it would be open, but not as often.
So I have another question, and this probably isn't a question that you can answer, but I'm curious about heat, because it seems like a steel storage container would get really hot in the summer, and I'm curious about what heat could do when you have a huge 40-foot storage unit full of fireworks.
I think that's a very reasonable question, and obviously I'm not an expert, but when I have, that issue was actually raised at the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting, and so I think a lot of people are wondering that. I did ask the fire marshal about that, and he said, obviously he's recommending this, so to his knowledge, I was trying to phrase it to him, and I was using the words, to, if it gets hot, does it just spontaneously combust, or is there a spot where we get to a certain temperature? And he was not concerned with that, although I think he also said he's not a, there's levels of experts, a pyrotechnic expert. That might be somebody really specialized that might be able to answer better on that. I will say, my understanding is from this year, even the transient fireworks stores, so the stores that just have a tent in a parking lot, my understanding was this year they were permitted to have a storage container, and that was how it was used. And some of those storage containers were in the middle of large retail stores, not in the middle of, but in large retail stores parking lots. You might have seen them when you were out. So, no, I have nothing. When I asked the fire marshal that, he had nothing to indicate that was a concern to him. And I know that at least this year, there were fireworks, in containers around the city with that, and it wasn't an issue, to my knowledge.
And one follow-up question. I know that you said that they're unrelated but related, that there'll be screening, or there's fencing. Is that fencing locked?
Yes. So 6 to 8 foot chain link fence, they put the screens in. It's got a gate for the fire department to access, and it has a lock on it.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Viola.
Thank you, Mr. President. You said that he was going to install some type of security camera, and so he can have the app on his phone. Would your client be willing to put in a 24-hour surveillance camera system where maybe it's monitored by somebody to help alleviate some of these concerns from his neighbors? Is that something you need to go back and ask him?
I would have to ask him. I can think of nothing off the top of my head other than, I'm not sure the cost, I guess, on one and the practicality of how that all works. But the idea itself, I can't think of any reason against it.
And follow up on Mr. Carroll's question, this inventory, so there's inventory, they store the inventory in the back of that store. I know they sell bingo supplies and gaming supplies in that store also, correct? And then they have, all the inventory is usually in that store.
They had previously sold bingo supplies. The last time I was in it, it's all or almost all fireworks.
It's all fireworks.
There is utility, there's a spot where the fire suppression system and such is, so not quite a closet, but a small room with that. But almost the entire store is open to that retail purpose. And so there is no back room or spot for inventory. And so all the inventory would be out there
In the showroom.
on the shelves. And so I think that's what arose with the fire marshal, was rather than having all the inventory stacked to the legal limit inside the building, which is, as we sit, that's been approved and that's totally legal. They thought, when they heard that from the fire marshal, that if that was his concern and that was safer, then that is how they'd like to proceed.
But the store, are they still going to have inventory in the store?
It would be greatly reduced. I mean, they're still gonna, they'll have more than one box of each thing on the shelf, but it would greatly alleviate.
But I guess my question is why do they need these storage containers during the off-season if they're not going to looking to increase their inventory and their sales?
And they may not. They'll need them going forward. They won't next year and so on to build up that inventory. Otherwise, they could keep doing exactly what they're doing, and that's just putting it all in the store. And I guess that's, sorry, I hope that answers your question, but they could operate how they are, but they were told by the fire marshal, and it's their understanding it'd be safer if they operated this way.
Are they looking to build up the inventory and keep it there for June and July, like you said, and then that's why they're going to be sitting there all winter? Or is there not going to be a big influx of inventory, going back to what Matt was asking, until the busy season?
Yeah, my understanding is they wouldn't stock up on the inventory until busy season, and then depending on how long it takes to get there and fill it. But their goal isn't to have maximum inventory there year-round. They haven't operated that way in the past, and the storage containers won't change that.
Thank you.
Mr. Evans?
Yeah, thank you. Just to kind of piggyback on Mrs. Volker, when you store those fireworks in that container, is there any labeling on the fireworks to say what temperature it can exceed? Because
Not-
I'll tell you, those C-bands, they can double the temperature. If it's 90 degrees outside and you seal that container with all the metal, that sun just hits it, it's just like an incubator. And if the fireworks has a statement that's saying, hey, you can't store the temperature above X number of degrees, how are you going to check that with the containers?
As I stand here right now, I'm not sure whether they have that on there. I guess I'd go back to when I was asked the question before, and I asked the fire marshal, it was his recommendation that was better and less of a concern than having them all in the store.
Oh, I understand that, but what I'm saying is that is there any kind of labeling on these fireworks that says do not have the temperature exceed so many degrees?
And I'm sorry, I don't know.
Well, that's something that should be known because, if you have fireworks in there and the temperature says nothing above 110 degrees, and you got these storage containers that's 140 degrees, you could have a problem.
Understood. I'd be happy to follow up on that, but I don't know as I stand here.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Mamaleni?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for your presentation this evening. I just have a couple quick questions that I was a little bit confused. I thought I understood initially, but now, follow me. They're not going to ramp up inventory. The reason for these storage units are just to reduce the inventory that's in the current brick and mortar store.
Yes.
Did
so
I
they-
hear that correctly?
So they don't have to operate that way. And if this year they were able to have one storage container there, just like the tent stores. And so this year they did operate with just one storage unit. So the two would change that. But otherwise, yes, the storage containers are simply to alleviate what fireworks, as we currently stand, could be stored in the store, and to put them out in storage container.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Council, just a few to follow up on the points made by my colleagues. First of all, I will acknowledge for the record that we received the email that you referenced earlier. I know, speaking only for myself, we received it late in the day, and even though the clerk was kind enough to print out a hard copy of it, and I appreciate your summary of the same, I don't feel like I've really had a chance to be able to fully vet through it. So I just want to acknowledge that from the get-go. We've got it, but I suspect that others are like me, that we really haven't had a chance to review it in any detail because of the time of receipt. I want to go back to the comments that you made with regard to the letter of remonstrance and the concern expressed by the neighbor with regard to your client and fireworks being demonstrated or shot off, whatever euphemism we want to use, on the property. I want to make sure I understand you correctly, because it sounds to me like you're acknowledging for the record that your client does have a regular practice of shooting off those fireworks on their property. But as I understood it, your argument is that ignore that because the people next door are doing the same thing.
So it's my understanding that my client has set off fireworks, or they have been set off in this location. I would not say regularly, and I think that those, whether or not fireworks are set off, those are addressed by other regulations other than the use variance regarding the storage of them. I don't think, it's my understanding in the last week that the neighbor has also set fireworks off, and I don't think pointing fingers or staying on that issue is helpful before the council. And I think that's something that the neighbors need to talk about and work through. But I don't think that affects whether or not there's a use variance for the storage of the containers, because whether or not everything is sold out of the building with all of its inventory in there, or whether we have storage containers with most of the inventory in there, unfortunately, it seems like that issue remains either way, that we need to work through that issue and not be a problem there.
And Counselor, I'm going to respectfully disagree with you for a couple of reasons. First of all, it is not the neighbor who is standing in front of us this evening asking for an approval of a use variance. It's your client. So what may or may not be happening next door, I would suggest is irrelevant to your client's request for the council to approve their request. The other thing that I would say is that two of the statutory findings that we have to make with regard to approving any use variance, I think, are germane to this issue. The first is that the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. The second is that the use value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. So respectfully, I would suggest to you that while you may prefer to have this dealt with as a separate matter of enforcing our fireworks ordinance, I'm going to disagree with you and say that it is 100% accurate, appropriate for us to consider this, and very much in keeping with the precedent that we've had for many years of asking those that come to us for an approval to be good corporate citizens, to do the right things while they're asking us to help them. So I would tell you that I find that argument to be puzzling. Moving on, I want to make sure that I understand correctly the chain of events here. As I understand it, your client's request was initiated as a result of a conversation with the fire marshal. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Did the fire marshal indicate to your client, to the best of your knowledge, that your client was required to ask for this use variance, or rather was it a recommendation?
My understanding was that it was not a requirement. It was a recommendation. That being because the area is, we're inspected periodically by the state and by the local. And so during that with the Mishawaka Fire Marshal, he mentioned this. And with regard to the neighbors and the lighting off of fireworks, I agree that that my client needs to abide by any ordinance that's in play or anything determined by this council. And if you do deem that a concern, certainly adding that as one of the prerequisites in the use variance, I'd have no issue with that.
And I appreciate that. I will tell you from my perspective, I suspect that it will be difficult for me to vote in favor of this unless I hear from your client directly, not through legal counsel, as much as I respect other attorneys. I want to hear from your client that they're committed to continuing to follow our ordinances with regard to fireworks, and that there isn't going to be a situation where, and they can only control what they do. But as alleged in the remonstrance letter, there is debris and detritus from the fireworks that's going onto the neighboring property. I think it's within everybody's understanding that that's something that we would all object to if we own property next door to where that was happening. So I'm going to need to hear from your client that, in some fashion, that they're committed to that. I want to jump back, though, to my last question, which was about the chain of events here. So prior to the conversation, correct me if I'm wrong, but the request is not generated by any independent business necessity on the part of your client, but rather is your client's good faith attempt to respond to the recommendation from the fire marshal. Is that correct?
Yes. And it's not as though my client had one conversation with the fire marshal. Every year, I know last year they were inspected, and so then my understanding with this year they were able to have a storage container like the transient vendors. So it's part of the ongoing, but that's what it arose out of one of those conversations, that idea of the storage containers and storing the inventory there.
I appreciate that. Thank you for your patience with me.
Thank
Any other
you.
questions from the council? Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor? If you would, please come forward to the podium. Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone present this evening who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come forward to the podium and begin by stating your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name's Rudy Vague. I own Ozarks Pawn Shop, which is located in the same development that the fireworks stands at, fireworks store is at. It used to be an old Kroger building and Revco. I'm in the Revco portion of it, so I'm on the farthest part away from it. But it still affects me because these containers are known for blowing up. The videos are all over. I was the one that had the videos. This one is in South Carolina. It says shipping containers loaded with fireworks ignite and cause fire in South Carolina. I suggest all you guys to pull this up and take a look at it. And there's a couple of videos that show ones that just had fountains in it, and the fountains blow. One thing about gunpowder blows no matter what. So if it's underwater and you ignite it, it will blow. Fire departments cannot put out gunpowder. It's going to have to extinguish itself after it blows. The fire department can only, and the fire extinguisher system that's built into that unit, can only put out the aftermath after all the fireworks have exploded. They can put out the fire of the remnants of after the explosions. You cannot put out gunpowder until once they've exploded. So that's why I'm strictly against this. You take metal, gunpowder, you put it together, you've created a bomb. If you have your daughter driving down, my daughter driving down the street with her my grandkids in it, and this thing blows up, and the doors of that container blow that fence off, and hits that car that's driving by. It's a one-time in a lifetime, oops. No disrespect to the fire marshal or the fire chiefs, but this happens in a bunch of different states. They blow. The city councils and the fire chiefs and the fire chiefs, I'm pretty sure they wish they could go back and say no to this, but they didn't have the opportunity because they already had blown. They found out after the fact. We are here before you to prevent this to happen in our community. Let it happen in South Carolina. Let it happen in Vegas, where it was extremely hot and it blew. Let it happen where the employee was smoking a cigarette, but he had to carry 2 boxes to the front of the store. So he took his cigarette and laid it down on a box, walked back to the store, and then he got stopped by a customer, and he never went back, and that cigarette blew that container blew the container up pretty ugly. You know, you're wondering why I brought this grinder. This grinder is every thief's right-hand man to get into anything, to cut that fence that they want to put the little slots in. The slots are great so nobody can see the containers, but the slot also protects the thief from being seen while he's grinding on it. What does this do to metal? It makes sparks. What does sparks and gunpowder do? It blows, and it'll be ugly because Mishawaka does have a problem with people trying to break into stuff. I mean, their lawyer did mention that, that I was going to bring that up. It's true, their front door was ripped open once for somebody to get in to get fireworks. It was reported, so there is a record at the police department. It's in records. My pawn shop, 3 times this year, somebody's tried to get into the pawn shops. I have firearms in there. Firearm dealers, and unfortunately, we have that problem with people trying to get in to get firearms. So I have a very sophisticated security system so that way nobody can get in. And they can't even walk by the building without us knowing that they're there. The thing about the firework place, most of them are standalone. They're typically not in a building with other tenants around them. They're normally standalone fireworks places. Somehow they merge from the bingo hall or the bingo supplies to fireworks. I really wasn't paying attention. I probably would have came and said, hey, wait, in with this other building. You know, what can we do? Can we get a surety bond? A surety bond is an insurance policy for everybody else other than him. His insurance company will take care of if there was an issue, a fire inside his store, or if somebody, something went off in the parking lot and injured somebody, it's to take care of that if they caused an injury. But their insurance company does not cover the storage unit or my pawn shop. Their insurance only covers them and anybody that they injure. They don't cover me. A surety bond, like a $5 million surety bond, would cover all the neighbors. The neighbors could do a claim against the surety bond, and then we can also have our claim for they're sending up fireworks, and we all watch fireworks. When they come back down to earth, what happens? You have smoldering pieces of cardboard that's still on fire, smoldering and possibly can burn. We've all seen it. I have a rubber roof. The storage unit that's joint with them also has a rubber roof. Our neighbors to the metal shop, they have a rubber roof. We don't want fireworks blown up over there if all possible. But that's all I can ask is please watch the videos. The videos will tell you everything. It's not for us. Let it be in somebody else's community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Mr. Mamalani.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Vey, for your presentation. Based on the question that I asked Mr. Visser, his response was that they're not going to have any additional fireworks. It's only to remove inventory from the store to the storage, outdoor storage.
If the council's going to give them the permission to do it, two things that I ask. One, it be seasonal. Labor Day, Memorial Day to Labor Day, just in the period of when they're going to need it. If they're going to need it, they're going to need it for the influx when the fireworks come in, and they pre-order it, so they're going to need a storage place before 4th of July. I understand that. I'm a businessman, and, it's not that I want him not to make money. Every business should be able to be out there to make money. My big thing is just the safety aspect of this. I don't want a bomb in my backyard of my business.
So that was my question. So you'd feel more comfortable with the same amount of inventory
Inside
under
the
roof,
building with the
inside?
fire suppression system in there. The container outside does not have a fire system in it. It's just a container. It's a metal container. Yes, they're brought over from overseas in those containers, but those containers can handle that. But they don't have, when they're on a ship, they don't have somebody trying to get into them with a grinder. They don't have an employee being, not paying attention to the cigarette and it drops out of his mouth, or, he lays it down to lift something and he forgets about the cigarette that he left there. Humans make errors. It's the errors that's going to cause a catastrophe with this. It's nothing that the firework place is doing with it. It's just, it could be an employee, it could be a thief. We don't know what's going to cause that to go boom, but there's obviously problems with them because the containers are exploding in other states. Let it be somebody else's state, not ours,
Thank you.
not our community. Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition, if you would, please come forward to the podium.
Good evening, Council. My name is Elvis Ballantyne, and I'm president and owner of Builders Iron Works and the real estate, along with my two sons, to the east of this property that we're discussing. And first of all, I will say, if this is allowed, it will be only the beginning of something that's going to continue to grow, and it won't be good. Now, council alluded that some of our employees have set off fireworks, not to my knowledge or not to my son's knowledge, but I can assure you, if that did happen, it will never happen again. But council seems to have quite a few things he's not sure about. And if some of you don't see this, I would like to see you raise your hand now. Thank you. But anyhow, I started Builders Iron Works in 1968. I feel that we are a very good tenant for Mishawaka. What we do is a great thing for Mishawaka. Some of the buildings that we have did for Mishawaka. I graduated from Mishawaka High School in 1956, and I had worked very hard. And my sons will continue to work very hard to be good for the city of Mishawaka. And Rudy has laid out everything, I think, about as plainly as it could be. But I will also say, I have always been aware that to make a bomb, you put gunpowder and metal. And these containers are huge. Why on earth would they need that much fireworks? I ask you, why would they need as much fireworks? Are they going to be I don't know how to come up with this word, are they going to be the distributor? Who knows? What I'm afraid of is that this is something that would only grow to be something much worse than what they're alluding that they want now. So I ask you, do not approve this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from the council? Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Please come forward.
Good evening, Council. I'm Tony Ballantyne, Vice President, Builders Iron Works. And we are obviously opposed to this use variance. We feel it's going to be a public safety issue, primarily with our employees and our building, our contents that we have. We've worked hard to get where we are in this business, and to have these two storage containers, which to piggyback on what Rudy said, is basically, we feel it's going to be a powder keg, just waiting to happen. Along with Rudy having issues with break-ins, we've had several break-ins with our cutting through the fence, just as Rudy had demonstrated with the cutoff grinder. And I just feel it's a matter of time before, we know criminals are not very bright, and it's just going to be a matter of time before one of them cuts in there and it, sparks, and this thing's going to blow up, We have concern as well, as Mr. Emmons has spoke about the issue with the heat. I don't, no disrespect to the fire department and the fire marshal, but I don't know that they're pyrotechnic experts. I don't pretend to know anything about it myself, but that is a genuine concern. As I've seen many of the videos and doing a little research, I've seen a lot of explosions that's happened from these containers, and it just does not make sense to us why, if I understand that, Morris is in the business to make money with this, but if the use variance is just supplemental, I don't understand if they're not going to increase their inventory, how that could be a good idea to have these containers in lieu of fire being enclosed in their facility with a fire suppression system. So I just, as a concerned citizen, I respectfully ask that you do not give this variance to them, and I appreciate your opportunity to speak today. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Ballantyne? Sir, a few questions really reflecting the letter of remonstrance that you submitted. For the record, that's dated July 1st, 2024. And I want to follow up on a couple of the points that are made in there for clarification. It indicates that the owners of the property next door have let off large fireworks and large boom makers from time to time up to the present, including the week of June 17th, 2024. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct.
Can you provide us with a little bit more detail with regard to the frequency and what impact that has on your business operations?
Actually, my office is right adjacent. They're just to the east of us, excuse me, to the west of us. In our office, I'm in the very corner west office. So actually, when the fireworks go off, a lot of times I go over, pull my shades or whatever, and see what's going on. And they're lighting them off in our parking lot. We've had actually guys in our shop that are in the middle of fabrication, doing welding, cutting, and some of these big bombs go off. They sound like dynamite, and we've had them startled, and we're actually worried about that for their safety as well, because, I mean, they could obviously get cut or injured, you know, in the course of just trying to do their job. And this is not, I believe the council said it happens every now and then. It's pretty much every day during the season of fireworks that they're being let off. And I can attest, I'm pretty positive none of our guys, because like I say, I'm in the office right adjacent, none of our employees have been lighting off any fireworks. If they did, they would have had to come back after hours, because our office staff is there longer than what our employees are. So that hasn't been an issue whatsoever. I can attest to that.
So do you have any sense of when these fireworks are let off next door, whether it is customers who are lighting off the fireworks that they just purchased, or whether it is the retailer themselves that are demonstrating their fireworks, or is it a combination of all of the above?
I can't attest to that.
And then you also make reference in your letter to at least one incident where there has been some debris that's found its way over to your property, and to quote you, related to their fireworks have landed on our property, possibly causing a grass fire at one time. Could you tell us a little bit more about that as well?
Yeah, I believe my brother was going to speak on that
Okay.
behalf, because he...
We can defer till that then.
Yes,
All right. Thank you, sir.
thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition, if you would, please come forward.
Hello, Council. I'm Brian Ballantyne. I work at Builders Ironworks as well. And I don't want to espouse on a few things. So over the years, roughly 10 to 12 times, our fence has been cut. Typically for catalytic converters, we've probably lost 3 to 4 catalytic converters over the years, and it's always through the cutoff grinder. So it's about 6 acres. I think last week there was a top view that showed all this. I'm surprised it's not being shown today. But the property is about 6 acres. The building, roughly 50 to 55,000 square feet. And so you can imagine how large that is. So it's easy for somebody to get access behind our property, which there's a pond, Kroger's is back there. And so it's easy for somebody to break in, and usually they'll break into our property sometimes to get to the pawn shop. Well, that's right where this place is. So that's what we're worried about, is once somebody finds out there's fireworks, that's what they're gonna do. And I realize everybody mentioned that before, so I'm a little redundant. So I wanted to bring that up. And there has been police reports of all these fence times it's been cut. You can actually go and look and see where all the fence has been cut, because we just mend it, we don't replace it. Near this area, there's a camper, 4 boats, a couple cars that are typically stored, which is right back to this area, which if something does happen to this, I don't know that our stuff would be protected from insurance. As it might have been said, our employees use this areas for breaks. There's a huge yard, and it's right next to this area. The yard and our fence is roughly, I'm guessing, 20 feet from where the storage unit was just located. People cut that grass. Our guys also park. Typically, sometimes we have 9 to 10 guys working in that shop. And at times we get overflow parking, and we're going to have overflow parking parked right next to that with all the work that's going to be done on the new road. And it's going to be right up next to this area. And to state, it was within this last couple of years that our yard was caught on fire, and I was the one that put it out. And after I put it out, their employee was the one that was putting out the fireworks. I did go over and let them know, and you could see the smoke that I put it out. It was probably 4 or 5 areas I had to stamp out with my foot, so luckily I caught it. And it was towards the end of the day, I was working late, and I did mention to him that we didn't appreciate the fireworks being shot off at all hours. And I actually recommended, if you're gonna shoot them off after office hours, but I also mentioned that that was kind of scary in the fact that they're shooting off fireworks and we're not there to protect our property. So this is something that scares us a little bit, the fact that now they're gonna have all these fireworks in container. So that's really all I have to add at this point.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Please come forward. And then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition? Hearing no one, are there any council members who wish to speak? Mrs. Volker.
Thank you. I just wanted to verify, we have a fireworks ordinance in our city, correct? And doesn't that fireworks ordinance say that no fireworks should be set off except, I believe, on the 4th of July, in the evening, New Year's Day, and there's some certain times, but our fireworks ordinance does not allow fireworks to be set off 365 days a year, all hours of the day. And I actually live pretty close to that shop, and I hear those fireworks, and I didn't connect that that's what was happening. You should call the police. If the fireworks are being set off, it's illegal. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this location is in my district, and I went down to take a look at it. Normally, when we consider these container issues, it's more from a cosmetic perspective, and I took a look at that area, and it looks like it's ideal for something like this, where it would be screened and all of that. So the issue really comes down to, what's in it and these concerns that we have. I would like to know more about specifically the fire marshal's thoughts and why he thinks it's safer to not have it with the suppression system, and what he feels his comfort is in assessing the risk of these fireworks, and like Councilman Emmons said, the temperatures and all that involved. I don't think, I personally have had time to consider it, and I'm guessing that's probably the view of some on the council. So with that in mind, I'd like to move that we postpone the vote on this until the next council meeting to give it full consideration, and those stakeholders involved to get us the information we need to make this decision.
Second. Thank you. A motion has been made and seconded to postpone second reading and further public hearing on further action on proposed resolution 2024-15 until our next regularly scheduled council meeting in August of this year. Are there any additional questions or comments from the council? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the matter will be postponed until our first regularly scheduled meeting in August of this year. Thank you.
Resolution number 2024-16, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, approving a petition of the Mishawaka Board of Zoning Appeals for the property located at 314 West Cleveland Road. This is the use variance for fine line micro tattooing services.
Thank you. We will now open the public hearing on proposed resolution 2024-16. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Danielle Zupka, and I am the owner of Ink and Stone. And I am currently moving into the space at 314 West Cleveland, and I am going to be a tenant. And I do permanent makeup tattooing, as well as ear piercing and other beauty services, and I am looking to add micro tattooing or tiny tattoos onto my service list. It is a little bit different. It takes a little bit of a spin on your traditional tattoo and piercing parlors, which is why we're looking for the use variance.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor? If you would, please come forward. Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone with us this evening who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come forward. And is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition? Are there any council members who wish to speak? If not, then I call for the question.
Question.
Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mrs. Hazen?
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Beninky?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hahn?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes.
Mr. Hicksonbaugh?
Yes.
Proposed resolution passes 9-0.
Ordinances on second reading.
Proposed ordinance number 2024-10, an ordinance amending Title 8 of the Chapter 58 of the Municipal Code of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, commonly referred to as the Traffic Code. This is amending the Traffic Code to add all-way stop signs at various intersections.
Thank you. May we have the committee report, please?
Yes, Mr. President, to the members of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, your Committee on Land Use Planning, to whom is referred the matter of proposed ordinance 2024-10, report that they have examined said matter and that their opinion should be adopted. This is signed by the entire committee, and I move for its acceptance.
Second.
Thank you. A motion has been made and seconded to approve the committee report. Any additional questions or comments from the council? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. At this time, it's my understanding that there is a desire to amend the proposed ordinance. So the chair would entertain a motion to amend the proposed ordinance by striking the reference to Prospect Drive and North Mason Street, and also striking the reference to 3rd Street and South Victoria Street, which would retain Cleveland and 6th and Carter Court and East Edgar Avenue.
Thank you, Mr. President. After talking with Chris Jamrose in engineering, it looks like we have a solution to the Victoria Street that would possibly be better than a stop sign. And then on Prospect Drive, possibly some larger plans in the works to fix that. So I'm comfortable removing those at this time. So I move that that be amended and those be removed.
Second.
Thank you. A motion has been made and seconded to amend the proposed ordinance by striking the reference to a all-way stop at Prospect Drive and North Mason Street, and also striking the reference to an all-way stop at 3rd Street and South Victoria Street. Are there any additional questions or comments from the council? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. With that, we will move forward with second reading and public hearing on proposed ordinance 2024-10 as amended. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor, please come forward to the podium.
Oh,
Good
hi. I'm Ambria Pruitt. I live at 1535 Troyer Trail. And I'll be honest, I'm not really sure everything that you were just saying. I'm not really following, but I know that we want a stop sign at Edgar and Carter Court is why I'm up here.
And don't feel bad, sometimes I confuse everybody in the room on a regular basis, but the proposed stop sign at Carter Court and East Edgar Avenue is still in front of the council, so, please continue to speak on it if you'd like.
Okay. When I moved in the neighborhood 5 years ago, we had about 45 children at that time. We have only grown, I don't have an exact number, but I'm guessing somewhere between 60 and 75 children now are in our neighborhood. And the cars go by on Edgar Avenue, there's no stop sign, and they just speed by, like they speed by. And we did a survey, but it was a cold, rainy day in October. No children were outside playing, no cars were coming by. And so the consensus, I guess, was to put a crosswalk we now have, but I still don't think that's enough. We have UPS and FedEx trucks speeding through, you know, and they're big. We have children ranging from high school down to, this year, we had preschoolers move in, you know, and they go to the park, and we tell them as parents, look both ways before you cross the street. But at the end of the day, they're children, you know, so the older ones, we can trust to look both ways. But they recently put up 35-mile-an-hour speed limits through there. So, you know, you have them going there, and in people's mind, if it's 35, I can do 40. And if I'm doing 40, I might as well do 45. And you're speeding down there, and there are children running back and forth. It's just not safe in our little neighborhood. You know, our streets, when we have cars parked on each side, the children would have to already be somewhat in the street to look both ways. And if a car is zooming by, you know, that could be an accident waiting to happen. I just don't think it's safe for our children in the neighborhood without the four-way stop.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the council? Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? If so, please come forward.
Good evening. Thank you very much. My name is Rick Oswald. I'm the Director of Advocacy for Habitat for Humanity of St. Joseph County. And we certainly support Ambria's request and Habitat and the homeowner's request for a four-way stop at the intersection of Edgar Avenue and Carter Court. I think as she so eloquently stated, as you go down Edgar, it's a through street and traffic travels at high rates of speed from time to time. The Fields at Highland is a 75-lot subdivision. We have about 13 to 14 remaining lots. We have 56 homes in there right now. We're going to be closing on another 6 homes yet here in 2024. As Ambria said, we probably have somewhere around 65 children who are at the age of 16 and under, and then we have another handful of children over that, up to 18 years old. In October of 2021, we completed the construction of Darnell Park, which is located between Edgar Avenue and Yearwood Lane. It's a park of about 3/4 of an acre, ADA accessible, and used on a daily basis by our families. She is absolutely correct that traffic flows very quickly through the subdivision from time to time. We have a lot of young children who are crossing the street, and yes, you tell them look both ways, but unfortunately, sometimes they don't. And safety is certainly a key issue. Speed of the vehicles going down Edgar Avenue is another issue. So we respectfully request that you favorably move forward with the request for a four-way stop. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Oswald? Thank you, sir.
Right. Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor? If so, please come forward.
I couldn't see.
Michael Compton, 1530 South Lake George Drive, Mishawaka. I'm here to speak on the stop sign at Edgar and Carter. This was an issue that came up when I was sitting up here with you folks, some of you folks. And it's been ongoing, really talked about for quite a while. It was brought to my attention from a person who lived, young lady who lives in Highland, and asked that we consider that. I know that there's been some studies done, and maybe the data doesn't support it, but in my mind, this is more about people, not about necessarily data. This is the newest neighborhood in Mishawaka. It is thriving with children, probably more so than any other neighborhood that we have. As I thought about this sitting there, I couldn't think of another neighborhood that has as many children per capita, maybe, than this one. This isn't a public park, I don't believe. I believe this is a little neighborhood park that they put together, but still, there's a lot of kids walking around and walking through there. I ask that you consider this, and a four-way stop at that street in that corner is something requested by the neighbors, and I ask that you honor their request. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Compton?
Better not. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor, if you would, please come forward. Then is there, oh, I'm sorry.
I get to take off my hat for a little bit. My name is Raven Boston. I live at 1721 Carter Court. And I just wanted to add a little bit to what my neighbors said. I understand that it's not warranted and there's not, the numbers weren't there, but I just feel that it only takes one car. It only takes one car to speed. And one kid to be coming around a car and be missed. I'm sorry, because I actually had an incident while this process was going, and thank God nothing happened. But my oldest actually got chased by a dog across this intersection. And I was here at a meeting while he was outside playing with his friends. And he could have been hit by a car. I didn't share this with anybody else. But I just feel that if there was a stop sign there, it could have been prevented. And I just want to be proactive and prevent accidents from happening. So.
Thank you. Any
That's all.
questions for Raven? Thank you, Raven. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor? If you would, please come forward. Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone with us this evening who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come forward. And is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition? Are there any council members who wish to speak? Mr. Violi.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have the honor of succeeding Mr. Compton here in the 5th District. About a month, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, when I was elected, after I was elected, Raven reached out and said she'd like me to sit in on their neighborhood watch meeting. I said, of course, I would love to do that. So I think it was about a month ago, I sat in on their neighborhood watch, and I had no idea that this was an issue. Raven was so generous. The next day said, I'm sorry you got blindsided by this question. You knew nothing about it. But immediately, I could tell by the group that was in attendance in that remote meeting, including the group from Habitat, the representatives from Habitat for Humanity, that this was they felt very strongly about this. They were passionate about it, and they really wanted this to go through. And I think Raven at that point said, well, right now we're just going to get a crosswalk, but we'll bring it up later at another time. And I went to some of our council members. I said, why do we have to look at this? Can we look at this before and not kick it down the road? So I did the little drive, went through the neighborhood, and to me, it looked like basically when they built the subdivision, they forgot to put a stop sign there. I mean, it belongs there. It's the only street, I drove by there again today just to refresh my memory. It's the only street that goes from one end to the other where there's no break at all. There's always seems to be a stop sign one way or the other. So it is a long road. And for anybody going to go 35, 40 miles an hour, I think it could definitely be a catastrophic issue. So, and the park, like Mike said, I think it is a private park, but it's right there. So there is a park right there, and there's no stop sign. And although I totally respect our engineering department, and I would always be willing to listen to their analytics and things like that, I think this is, like Mike said, Mr. Compton said, this is a people thing. This is just a gut thing that we need a stop sign there. And I just don't see the harm of having a stop sign there. I don't know what the results were of why we were told that we don't need one there, but this to me is a no-brainer. And I would hope that we all support it.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from the council? Mr. Evans.
Thank you, Mr. President. With this ordinance here, I've put in 2 stop signs on Cleveland in 7th and Cleveland and 6th. And I'm withdrawing the one on 7th Street, been talking with the engineering department. But the one on 6th in Cleveland, talking with the neighbors, talking with the engineering department, they agreed that there should be a stop sign there due to the fact that parking on the street, not only narrow, but there's just limited parking. And because they considered putting no parking on one side of the street, but that would eliminate the capability of visitors coming or the homeowners being able to park in front of their house. So in talking with the engineering department, and that, I've come to the conclusion that I'd like to withdraw the one on 7th in Cleveland and also promote the one on 6th in Cleveland. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? And hearing none, I will call for the question.
Question.
Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mrs. Hazen?
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Beninky?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Ms. Han?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes.
Mr. Hicksema?
Yes.
Proposed ordinance as amended passes 9-0. What did I do with, where's the, jeez. I'm so excited. Proposed ordinance number 2024-11, an ordinance amending Chapter 50 of the Municipal Code of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, as from time to time amended, commonly known as Parks and Recreation Ordinance of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana. This is to amend the municipal code for the DORA program.
Thank you. May we have the committee report, please?
Thank you, Mr. President. To the members of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, your Committee on Public Health and Safety, to whom was referred the matter of proposed ordinance number 2024-11, report that they have examined said matter and that in their opinion should be adopted. This is signed by the entire committee, and I move for its acceptance.
Second.
Thank you. A motion has been made and seconded to approve the committee report. Any additional questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. With that, we'll move into second reading and public hearing on proposed ordinance 2024-11. Good evening, Mr. Lynch.
Good evening, President Hicksonball and honorable members of the council. Actually, the DORA ordinance, there's two parts to it. The first part pertains, that's 2024-11, amending the park ordinance to allow alcohol in a DORA ordinance. This has to happen in order for the DORA to take place within Buda Park and the parks that are down around the riverfront area where this is located. So there's two parts. One that would amend the park ordinance that would allow for the DORA, which would allow for alcohol to be served under the DORA ordinance within the parks that are down there. And I'm asking for your approval of this. Again, I'm very enthusiastic, as you know I am, about this implementation of a DORA. This initiative represents a significant step forward in our ongoing efforts to enhance the vibrancy and appeal of our riverfront area. And this, we will get more into the nuts and bolts and the positives and negatives of a DORA, but I would ask for your approval of this part that would impact the DORA being allowed in a park.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Mrs. Volker.
Thank you. I just need to, thanks, Mr. Lynch. I just need a clarification on this ordinance. Is this saying that we can have alcohol in any park?
No.
Okay,
No.
so can you tell me, like, where I'm reading the ordinance, and it says, the city of Mishawaka has made improvements and supported.
If you go down to, sorry to cut you off, if you go down to the second page, right above where section 2 at the end of, it says section 50,
So it refers specifically to.
prohibited acts, except, and it goes on to say, bring any controlled substance as defined by the laws, the state drug bureau, et cetera, except on written permission from the Board of Parks and Recreation or its duly authorized agents, or unless the park is in a designated outdoor refreshment area, DORA. So it would only mean that we would be okaying this to happen within a DORA, which was within a park.
So just to follow up on that then and clarify, if the second ordinance passes and that second ordinance is modified and includes another park, we don't have to change this ordinance.
For the DORA, as we're recommending with the footprint, no, it wouldn't need to be amended.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions for Mr. Lynch? Mr. Mamalani?
Thank you, Mr. Hicksonball. And this isn't more of a question, but I guess if you could kind of clarify for myself and some of the folks that are listening. Right now, you can rent a pavilion within the city limits at a park, apply for a permit, and be allowed to consume alcohol, correct?
As I understand it, that's the way it goes, yes.
So what we're approving here on this ordinance is that if park within the established DORA, the city or whomever wouldn't need to apply for a permit every
That's
single
correct. day.
correct?
That's correct. And last August, I went before the park board and talked to them specifically about this ordinance. Councilman Violi, I think you're a part of that, and there was broad support across the park board for this.
So again, just to confirm, any park outside of the designated DORA area will still not be allowed to have alcohol unless a permit has been
That's correct.
given.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions for Mr. Lynch? Mrs. Hazen?
I guess I'm a little confused. So it only lists the public house, social cantina, but then C says any additional licensed premises. So does that cover all the others that are listed in the next one?
This only refrains,
Or is it,
Councilwoman Hazen, this would only be, can I have the map, please?
Mr. Lynch, let me make a suggestion here.
Yes.
Mr. Triple, would you like to chime in with regard to the various legal questions that have been posed by my colleagues with respect to the effect of the passage of this ordinance and how it impacts our parks?
Well, it's only going to impact the downtown zone that's been identified as being, presented to you this evening. So it's not all the parks, it's just this downtown region that's
Right.
identified, period.
And to Mrs. Hazen's point,
Mr. Lynch?
sorry.
I'm not done. Your exuberance is running away with you this evening, Mr. Lynch.
I'm not sure what else was asked, so I'm sorry.
So, to button this up, this is not a freestanding approval that's being requested to allow the general rules with regard to the consumption of alcohol to take place in any area in any park other than an area of a park that is within the map of a DORA area.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Are there other questions for Mr. Lynch? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? If you would, please come forward. Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? Is there anyone with us this evening who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come forward. And is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition? Are there any council members who wish to speak? If not, then I call for the question.
Question.
Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mrs. Hazen?
no?
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hahn?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes.
Mr. Hicksonbaugh?
Yes.
Proposed ordinance passes 8-1. Proposed ordinance number 2024-12, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, establishing a designated outdoor refreshment area.
Thank you. May we have the committee report, please?
Yes, Mr. President. To the members of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, your Committee on Public Health and Safety, to whom was referred the matter of proposed ordinance number 2024-12 report, they have examined said matter and that in their opinion should be adopted. This is signed by the entire committee, and I move for its acceptance.
Second.
Thank you. A motion has been made and seconded to approve the committee report. Any additional questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The record will reflect that the council has in front of it a proposed amendment to this ordinance that in relevant parts makes some grammatical and formatting changes. In multiple sections, assigns the day-to-day administration of the DORA area, if it's approved, to the Board of Public Works and Safety as opposed to the council. The amendment touches on an enhanced role for the council to play in reviewing the continued operation of the DORA through the use of our Public Health and Safety Committee, as is outlined in Section 7 of the ordinance. And then it also, the proposed amendment would also include an enhanced list of expectations for the operation of the DORA in Section 7 of the ordinance, and in particular, some new provisions with regard to the use of approved cups and logos, as well as an expectation on the part of the council that the operation of DORA will not become a burden upon our public safety services. So at this time, the chair would entertain a motion to amend proposed ordinance 2024-12 as is reflected in the hard copy of the amendment that has been distributed to the council.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. A motion has been made and seconded to amend proposed ordinance 2024-12 as is reflected in the hard copy of the amendment that has been distributed. Any additional questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. So we will now commence with second reading and public hearing on proposed ordinance 2024-12 as amended. Mr. Lynch.
Good evening, President Hicksonbaugh and honorable members of the council. I'm here before you today to express again my enthusiastic support for the implementation of a DORA, designated outdoor refreshment area in Mishawaka. This initiative represents a significant step forward in our ongoing efforts to enhance the vibrancy and appeal of our riverfront area. The riverfront area has long been a jewel in Mishawaka's crown, offering scenic beauty, recreational opportunities, and a sense of community. The introduction of a DORA will further elevate this area, transforming it into a premier destination for residents and visitors alike. Here's why. First of all, economic growth. A DORA will attract more foot traffic to our riverfront, benefiting local businesses, restaurants, etc. Increased visitation means more revenue for our local economy, fostering a thriving business environment. Community engagement. The DORA will provide a unique space for social gatherings, events, and festivals. It will encourage residents to spend more time outdoors with a beverage, enjoying the amenities and ambience of our beautiful riverfront. Tourism appeal. By offering a distinctive and enjoyable experience, the DORA will draw tourists from neighboring areas and beyond. The influx of visitors will put Mishawaka on the map, as it already is, but this will be another added element. But it will put it on the map even more importantly as a multi-visit destination, enhancing our city's reputation and visibility. We believe also there'll be enhanced quality of life. The DORA aligns with our vision of creating a vibrant, inclusive, and dynamic community. It will offer a safe and welcoming environment for people to relax, socialize, have a beverage, and enjoy Mishawaka's unique charm. Innovation and progress. Adopting a DORA demonstrates Mishawaka's commitment to innovation and progress. It shows that we are a forward-thinking city that values creativity and is willing to embrace new ideas to enhance the quality of life for residents. In conclusion, establishing a DORA, from my perspective, in Mishawaka is a very strategic move that will bring numerous benefits to our community. It will make the riverfront a lively, attractive, and economically vibrant destination, enriching the lives of those who live, work, and visit here. I therefore urge the City Council to support this initiative and help us to create a riverfront area and a DORA that we can all be proud of. I'm not going to go through all the nuts and bolts, but just to say that as of July 1st, the General Assembly last year made possible for DORAs to happen. As of July 1st of 2023, this became an option. We came before the council last year and have come before the council this year. In essence, the door allows adults 21 and over to purchase an alcoholic beverage from a participating vendor and walk within that designated area with a beverage of choice and a cup that will have a designated sticker on it. We believe it essentially gives more freedom and a safe environment to our patrons and event visitors and potential increased business for our outstanding vendors. And, you know, we've shown time and time again through festivals, through all kinds of activities, concerts, that the Riverfront Ironworks, Beater Park, the Beer Garden are places that people come to. But what happens now is a person can't go to the Social Cantina and they have to finish a drink before they walk to the beer garden or walk around this area. We've looked at 36 different doors across Ohio, Michigan, and Indiana, and as we've looked at this, none of them have had significant issues. And as I've talked to folks around those 3 states, in Shelbyville being one of the newest one, Shelbyville has adopted a door for essentially their whole downtown. And they call it, in Shelbyville, they call it dooring, a verb, where they can go out with their friends and family, have a couple beverages, walk around the downtown, and visit with their friends and family, and also go into shops, go into other establishments. It provides, we think, for a really excellent opportunity for people to come and gather and just relax, have a good time. And we think that this door in this map, and it's the map that I'm going to have Maddie hand out, is the original map. And just, is that okay? Please, if you wouldn't mind. The reason I'm handing it out to make sure that we're talking about the same map, because the map of the ordinance has been amended several times. And the map, as you will see, goes in front of the riverfront. It goes to the mill, into the mill part 2, ends at Front Street, ends at the front of the mill part 1, and goes to the edge of Front Street around to Main Street or Church Street, and yeah, that's the boundary. The boundary has been really tightened up, and we think that it represents a great place for us to start. We need to walk before we run, and I believe that this map would allow for us to have an effective space that's very confined for us to have a DORA. And with that, I have a couple other folks. I'll take questions. I have Tim Ryan to talk to us about sanitation plan. I have Alex Arndt here to talk about the safety plan. But before I do that, I would take any questions that you would have.
Thank you. And before we ask questions, thank you for your work on this, Mr. Lynch. I know you put a lot
It's
of
been
time
my
and effort
pleasure.
into it.
And thank you to
it's
the council
appreciated.
for your collaboration. And we've listened, we've heard, we've changed, we've adapted, and we think that what we have before us is a very conservative ordinance. As a matter of fact, I would say it's the most conservative of any of the 36 that I've seen in terms of days and hours and the rules that we have in place.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Lynch? Then, Mr. Carroll.
I just had a quick one, just for the record, Mr. Lynch. We've had this conversation before, but it looks like this could possibly include some residences. I just want to make sure that this won't adversely affect people having their own private alcohol in their own residence or building in
It will
common
not.
areas. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Emmons.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Lynch, on your presentation, and that we've had numerous conversations about DORA and the layout, and I know it's changed a number of times, and I've always had a concern about how it's going to be policed. Right now, the establishments that sell alcoholic beverages, they're not policed in the sense of staying within the boundaries of their own establishment. how are we going to police the area of Dora when we can't do it within the 3 businesses that are there now?
That's a good question, and I would say that our vendors, as well as our Parks Department, are doing their very best to make sure that it is indeed policed. I've been down there on numerous occasions, and to what I've seen, Mr. Emmons, and it may not be 100% of the time, but I believe all of our vendors do just an incredible job making sure that they're not over-serving, that people are staying within, right now, they have to stay either within the beer garden, or unless it's a festival, or, I mean, not a festival, or concert, in which case Mr. Blasco from the Parks Department has extra fencing in which people can walk within. But I think our folks are doing the very best job they can in terms of our bartenders, the management of all 3 vendors to make sure that folks abide by the liquor laws. And we have not had, as far as I know, and we'll have Alex up in a minute, one situation where the police have been called to deal with folks who have been drunk and disorderly or otherwise. So I would say to you that the predominant amount of time, people are following the rules. There was a case I was made aware of during a market time or another time where people were leaving the beer garden, and subsequent to that, talked with Mr. Blasco as I talked with some of you, and he put up more signs. They did some more education. I think part of it, Mr. Emmons, is education to our patrons as well as our vendors. Signage will be a big part of it, but I'm confident. We have not had one issue related to drunk and disorderly down there, as far as I know. Our big issues down there. I think our vendors do a great job. I think the regular patrols that our police do right now will be sufficient. And I think within this confined map, this boundary, I think we'll have great success. And I think people will predominantly follow the rules. Some may have to be reminded, but for the most part, I think we'll have great success. Education, signage, and not just education of our vendors and their staff, but education of our patrons and the people who come to the door as well.
Well, I appreciate that, and I hope it works. But my concern is that our parks, and especially down here at the riverfront where we're going to have Dora, that it continues to be a family-oriented park, not an adult park, especially on Sunday. I don't feel that there should be alcohol served down there between 11 and 4. I think that should be a day that is free of alcohol, except it's being sold in the establishments, and they stay in the establishment.
Well, right now, you know.
Because I've taken pictures of people right now not abiding by the guidelines.
Yeah.
And here now, we're going to promote more.
Well, and again, we haven't had one call, as far as I know, to the police department about drunk and disorderly. Have we had people come out of the beer garden? Yes, and I've seen those pictures, and we've addressed that with the Parks Department, with signage, with more education. And I think between what Alex will present in terms of our regular shift strength, between the education we do with our patrons and the education we do with our vendors, I think we can make sure that people continue to follow the rules. But I would say that predominantly, as I've been down there, I have not seen one person not follow the rules. Do people slip through? I think we'd be remiss to say that people may go down there with a Yeti cup and have their own refreshment. And this will, within a Dora, you can only have a Dora beverage in a Dora cup within a specific time. So I think we can do the education, provide the appropriate enforcement if necessary, but no more than what we do now. And I think the Dora will thrive there.
I got one question. If they're violating the guidelines of Dora and they're outside and they're drinking, and they have drinks with them and everything, what's the consequence? Anything?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
If the Dora is passed and people are drinking outside of the designated area, Is there any consequence other than just telling them to get back into the area?
Well, I think we will educate folks and signage will be there. So yes, we'll remind them when we see it. And if they're repeat offenders, I mean, that's something that we will notify the law enforcement and we will ask them to deal with it. But I mean, am I naive enough to say that it won't happen? No. Yeah. I was born on Tuesday, but not last Tuesday. So I think we can expect that to happen from time to time. I think people have to be reminded. I think there'll have to be continued education. And if folks continue to not abide by the rules, then we'll have to take those privileges away. I mean, but we'll do that in tandem with our police department.
Well, I wish you luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Lynch? Just a couple of follow-ups, and again, thank you for all the information that you've shared with us on multiple occasions. Just to hone in on the essentials a little bit further, and to follow up on your point, as I read the ordinance, the DORA would only be in operation on Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays from 4 to 10, with last call at 9:30. Saturdays from 12 p.m. to 10 p.m. with last call at 9:30, and then 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Sunday with last call at 3:30. Is that correct?
Yes.
At the time, and I think you'll recall this, at the time of the informational meeting that we held recently, Ms. Hahn in particular was a vocal advocate for us taking a look at an expanded map that would incorporate some of our smaller businesses. And that's not the map that's in front of us, but would you agree with me that this ordinance indicates that by no later than October 31st, that the Common Council's Public Health and Safety Committee is going to review the operation of DORA totally, but then also pay particular attention to the consideration of further expansion into the remainder of the central business district in conjunction with the opinion of the police department?
Yes, absolutely, and I think that's warranted. Ms. Hahn and I have talked about this specific thing, and it really goes back to we want to walk. We want to make sure this is successful within a defined boundary before we expand it. And we've gotten the police department's recommendations, and they've looked at this, and Alex will report about that, but their recommendation is start small. But if, upon review, if you think it's going well and would like to expand it, it's the council who would make that decision to amend it.
And is it not, in fact, the case, and this builds on Mr. Emmons' concern, that the council also retains the authority to revoke the DORA designation if, in fact, there tends to be a significant number of people who don't follow the rules and make this a problem for the community as a whole? Is that
Yes,
correct?
that is true. And, you know, this in the ordinance, you're giving the police chief as well as the mayor the opportunity to suspend it until the council would then act on it. But the mayor and/or the chief of police could suspend it immediately, and then the council would have to take more action on it.
Absolutely. And then one other point that was raised by Ms. Hahn at the informational meeting, one of the concerns that was expressed was that the ability to allow temporary vendors to come in conjunctions with events or festivals makes sense, but to allow somebody who doesn't have a brick and mortar site within the DORA map to set up a truck on a repetitive basis would be problematic. And my reading of this ordinance is that while those temporary permittees can operate within the area in conjunction with that event or festival, the ordinance obligates the Board of Public Works not to allow a permanent presence on the part of those temporary permittees separate from participation in those events or festivals.
That is right, and I concur, and I think we need to give folks within our area, vendors, the best opportunity to serve the clientele that would take advantage of the DORA.
Thank you.
Thank
Other
you.
questions for Mr. Lynch? Mr. Viola.
Can you give us a timeline again if this is passed, when it would be, give us just a quick, where does it go from here? And how long
So
does it
if the
take?
council would be so inclined to pass the ordinance, then we would need to take it and get approval from the state. It could take up to 90 days for state approval. However, we've adopted an ordinance that is very similar to those that they have okayed, given their stamp of approval to. And I've talked with Alex. She is a very astute young lady. Councilman Hicksonball and I have talked with her, and she believes that depending on how many come before them, we could have it done within 30 days. And then, we need time anyway to get the signage and everything in place. But it could be in place, I would say, approval 30 days. Probably it would be a constructive, rough estimate to say that we could be operational within 60 days. That's educational signage and everything in place.
That's everything.
Everything.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
All right. And with that, I'd like to have Alex Arndt, Chief Arndt, come up from the MPD to give his perspective.
Good evening, President, members of the council. I'm Alex Arndt, Assistant Chief of the Police Department here in Mishawaka. I'm going to be on the hot seat to answer any questions that you might have, but I know that a letter was distributed to you for your review prior to the meeting. I'll just kind of hit some of the high points on there, the highlights of that. The police department does maintain support of DORA, though we would advocate for the smaller, more concise footprint of the map that was handed out to you tonight. I want to assure you that the current staffing structure will be able to address any issues without a burden to the public safety. What I can say is that we will continue to patrol, and it's business as usual. We're patrolling down there as it is. This will be a new concept for that area, but we will continue to patrol in the same manner. Our new staffing model with the 12-hour shifts with additional officers on the street also allows us some resources to be able to respond to any potentially larger crowds or any issues that may develop down there that we think attention is needed for on a daily or weekly basis. The smaller footprint that's being recommended will allow the police department to evaluate for our effectiveness of operation related to safety and to address any unforeseen challenges or issues. This is going to be new to the police department here in Mishawaka, and this will allow us to, in a concise area, to be able to evaluate our effectiveness and, again, the safety of our community. Again, one of the other issues, since there is the second area that was proposed that we would see as a concern is the pedestrian traffic in a busier area with more busy streets such as Lincoln Way or Main Street and First Street if people are traversing back and forth. So this is the ease of pedestrian movement. If we go with the proposed map that's in front of you, can help to eliminate some of those issues while allowing for this DORA to successfully operate. And at this time, if there are any questions that you may have, I will try to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions for Chief Arndt? Chief, just to reiterate, I appreciate the work that we were able to do as a council in conjunction with the administration and the command staff at the police department to implement that investment in public safety and our 12-hour staffing model. I am concerned that there's the potential for this to work in contravention of this. But I respect your opinion and the opinion of the other chiefs, so that means a lot to me. But my hope would be that we can continue to keep a close eye on this. And when we identify that there are issues, I don't think that there will be, but if there are, that we'll react promptly to address this before this works at counter purposes to the historic investment that we've made in police services in Mishawaka. So more of a request than anything else. But to that end, this ordinance also reflects some discretion on the part of the police department and the chief to be able to ask those businesses within the DORA to participate in securing private security if a need is identified. And my hope would be that the police department will also look at this through that lens so that if that issue becomes one that does pose a drag on our staffing resources, that one way to address it will be to ask those business owners who choose to participate in the DORA to help partner with us on obtaining that security. So more comments than anything else, but I appreciate the work that went into the letter that you sent us and your participation in this process throughout.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else for Chief Arndt? Thank you, sir.
And if I could invite Tim Ryan from Central Services, our street commissioner, to come up and talk to us about the sanitation plan.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. My name is Tim Ryan. I'm the Director of Central Services for the City of Mishawaka. Matt, Mr. Lynch has asked me in the past to look over the sanitation plan. Currently, the area you have in front of us is included in our daily and evening sanitation and weekend sanitation. The only issue would be as we lose our seasonals, getting that coverage on the weekends. Looking at the expanded map, it would be a little more challenging because now you're getting a larger area. Our main focus right now, when we have afternoon, evening, and weekend, is mainly the Riverwalk and the parks along the Riverwalk to keep those clean. So this footprint would fall right into what we're doing.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Ryan? Thank you, Tim.
All right, thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? If you would, please come forward. And is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone with us this evening who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Craig Fry. I live at 1115 Wakefield Court in Mishawaka. As some of you probably know, I don't consume alcohol, and I believe that Mishawaka has done an unbelievably good job with our city parks. And to contaminate that with people who overindulge with alcohol is a mistake in my mind. I walk in Heroes Park every day as part of my walking pattern. So, and I see Mr. Volley's face every day when I walk. And so my point is Mishawaka is proud of its parks, and why we would add alcohol that brings problems with it. It's not gonna be a good thing in the long run. So for those people who wanna make money, that's fine, I guess, but as a citizen, I wanted you to know there was one person out here that doesn't agree with the position. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Fry? Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition, please come forward. And is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition? Are there any council members who wish to speak? Mr. Emmons.
Yeah, I just have a question. Maybe I'm wrong, but this outline of the DORA goes over to Main Street. Didn't the first map bring it back a little bit farther to the west?
Why don't we have Mr. Lynch come to the podium and we can have him address that question.
No, this is actually, from what we proposed last year, we've tightened this up. We moved it back from the Riverwalk, but it went as far as it is now. But it does not go over to Church Remain. It ends at front, and it doesn't go in front of the mill. So no, what you're seeing is the more confined, restrictive, the smaller footprint.
Okay. I just didn't think that it went all the way over to Main Street. I thought it came back a little bit.
But it stops. It does not go crossing.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah, it stops there. No, that's where we had it.
Okay. Thank you for that
Thank you.
clarification. Appreciate that.
Mr. Carroll.
Could I ask Mr. Lynch one quick question? You almost got to sit down. It just occurred to me that there may be some activities that go on, the ice skating rink comes to mind, where we may not want people consuming alcohol during that activity. This doesn't block the Parks Department from setting those restrictions within the DORA for certain activities, does it?
Not at all.
Okay.
Nope.
Thank you.
Anything else for Mr. Lunch before he sits down once again? Thank you again, sir. And we are back at the stage of questions and comments from the council. Ms. Hahn.
I would like to make a comment. I want to thank the street department, the police department for their work looking into this, and I think the right thing to do is to start with the smaller footprint, so everybody's comfortable. The public can see that hopefully it's a successful thing for Mishawaka. We talked a lot about attracting people, economic growth, just doing really great things for the city of Mishawaka. I just want to always make sure that we are including our local businesses and all the great things that we have done and will do and are going to do. So I think the right thing, like I said, is to start smaller. And I will personally be, hitting Mr. Lynch up at the end of October, making sure that we're looking at it again to safely and efficiently make sure we're including our small businesses.
Thank you. Mr. Carroll.
I just want to say thank you to the administration for answering all the questions. Had folks peppering us with a lot of questions, and we always got an answer, so definitely appreciate that. But as far as, you know what, that question was answered, sorry. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Mr. Emmons.
Thank you, Mr. President. As I've stated before, I have reservations about the DORA and whether we're going to be attracting the wrong clientele down here to our Riverwalk and to the DORA area and that. And like I said, I have concerns about alcohol being served on Sunday down there other than in the designated areas of the restaurants and bars down there that we have now. So I'm going to say yes on this, but with reservations, that hopefully it doesn't attract the wrong type of clientele down there. And I hope that our police department can police the area and provide a safe area down there for our constituents. And I'm hoping that it doesn't draw the wrong clientele into Mishawaka. And hopefully that if it does, we can bring it back to the council and we can correct the situation. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Then I also want to thank everyone for their work on this, the administration first and foremost, but also my colleagues who now, 2 successive councils, have spent a considerable amount of time considering this issue. And I would agree with Mr. Emmons. The concerns that have been expressed this evening and in the past by residents certainly warrant some consideration. But on balance, I'm willing to err on the side of affording the residents of our community the opportunity to partake in these type of districts, just the same as folks who reside in other communities across the state. And I'm willing to bet that the citizens of Mishawaka and Mishawaka as a community is going to be able to appropriately operate within a DORA environment. And I think there's some track record that shows that other communities, much smaller with much fewer resources, have been able to do it successfully. But what gives me the peace of mind to be able to take just a little bit of leap of faith and to vote in favor of this is the fact that I believe that this council and this administration are committed to paying very close attention to this situation. And I believe that the police department leadership will as well. And at the first sign of significant trouble, I do believe that it's incumbent on all of us to act very promptly and to revisit this issue because Mr. Fry is right. We've made some historic investments in our downtown area and our parks, and the last thing that we want to do is denigrate that investment through some unintended consequences. So while I have those concerns, on balance, I'm going to err on the side of supporting this ordinance this evening, and I look forward to some updates from the administration as even before October with regard to how it operates if it passes. And with that, if there are no other questions or comments, I will call for the question.
Question.
Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mrs. Hazen?
No.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hahn?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes.
Mr. Hicksabah?
Yes.
Proposed ordinance as amended passes 8-1. Proposed ordinance number 2024-19, an ordinance annexing contiguous territory to the city of Mishawaka, Indiana, and providing zoning classification therefore. This is annexing and establishing zoning as R1 Single Family, east side of Fur Road, across from Preserve Apartments, extending to Clover Road, and this is a vote only.
Thank you. As accurately noted by the clerk, we conducted a public hearing on this proposed ordinance at our last council meeting. So in conjunction with state law, at this time, I will open the floor for questions or comments from the council with regard to proposed ordinance 2024-19. Oh, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead of this myself. Mr. Mamalenti, you saved me again. May we have the committee report, please?
Absolutely, Mr. President. To the members of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, your Committee on Land Use Planning, to whom is referred the matter of proposed ordinance 2024-19, report that they have examined said matter and that their opinion should be adopted. This is signed by the entire committee, and I move for its acceptance.
Second.
Thank you. A motion has been made and seconded to approve the committee report. Any additional questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Now with that, and thank you again, Mr. Mamalenti, we'll move to questions and comments from the council. And if there are none, I will call for the question.
Question.
Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mrs. Hazen?
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hahn?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes.
Mr. Hicksabah?
Yes.
Proposed ordinance passes 9-0.
Thank you. With that, we'll move into privilege of the floor. Members of the public are invited to the podium to speak with respect to non-agenda items only under privilege of the floor. Seeing no one, we'll extend the same invitation to anyone participating remotely. Thank you. And with that, we'll move into unfinished business.
Yes, Mr. President, we have the matter of the mayor's veto of ordinance number 5893.
Thank you. Given that there have been various legal issues raised with regard to this matter, I'm going to call on our council attorney, Mr. Triple, to state his legal opinion as has been presented to the council in writing.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would reiterate my legal opinion has not changed. I circulated a legal memorandum to the council on July the 3rd outlining what I believe the mayor's lack of ability to veto zoning matters in the city. I will say that I did receive his veto in detail and reviewed it, and the legal analysis, I would say, has not changed my mind. Section 2103 of the Mishawaka City Code did, back in 1981, authorize the mayor to veto ordinances or orders or resolutions of the council upon passage by the council. However, in 1985, the Indiana Code, under Section 364614, specifically determined, or actually specifically amended, the general powers of the mayor, and it specifically states this section does not apply to a zoning ordinance or an amendment to a zoning ordinance or resolution approving a comprehensive plan. So therefore, since 1981 was the passage of the Mishawaka Ordinance, 85 was the passage of the state law that amended that, we have a bit of an issue. The mayor also mentioned there was case law on point. I reached out to AIM because they said they had, that John Rogaman, the city attorney, had reached out to AIM. I spoke with general counsel there, Becca. She advised that they provided resources to the city. Among them, as I had surmised, was the case of Wilson versus Brown, which was an Indiana Court of Appeals case passed in 1984. That case, again, has been abrogated by statute because it interpreted different statutes that have since been amended, including the Indiana Zoning Code that states that a legislative body must have passed an ordinance specifically giving the executive the power to veto zoning. And again, going back to the 85 amendments of the mayoral veto authorization, saying that, again, this section does not apply to a zoning ordinance. With all of that being said, in light of the mayor's veto, if it is the pleasure of the council to approve the development of the Casey's, which you did at the last meeting, it's my recommendation that you vote to override, since we have a bit of a legal dispute. That would be the cleanest way, if it is the council's opinion that it wants to move forward with approval of the zoning ordinance that you approved at the last meeting.
Thank you. And based upon that opinion, which I agree with, one follow-up question, Mr. Triple. So by virtue of the council, if it's our pleasure to do so, taking a vote, it's not conceding any argument to the contrary of the opinion that you just stated. Is that correct?
Absolutely not.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions for the council attorney?
I guess, Mr. Higginbotham.
Mr. Mamalati?
I guess I could ask a layman's question or a non-lawyer question, but just for myself and those that may be listening, if there is still a dispute between both legal entities and the veto does not happen, what happens, Mr. Triple?
If you would not override the veto, is that the question?
Correct.
Then I suspect that the petitioner, Casey's, could seek a legal remedy.
And then who would determine which attorney is correct?
A judge, a court of competent jurisdiction, they would file suit in.
In which the city of Mishawaka would pay for, correct?
I would presume the city would defend their position, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions for our legal counsel? Thank you, Mr. Triple. And with that, I will, at this time, entertain a motion to override the mayoral veto of ordinance number 5893.
I motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. A motion has been made and seconded to override the mayoral veto of ordinance number 5893. Any additional questions or comments from the council? Mr. Emmons.
Thank you, Mr. President. Although I have not changed my position on the previous votes of the reasoning of the parcel regarding this ordinance, I do agree with our council attorney, Mr. Triple, opinion that Mayor Wood's veto is not allowed under Indiana statute. Therefore, I will be supporting my colleague's position and voting in favor of the override of the Mayor Wood's veto.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments from the council? Then hearing none, I would call for the question.
Question?
Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mrs. Hazen?
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hahn?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes.
Mr. Higginbotham?
Yes.
Veto is overridden by a 9-0 vote.
Thank you. With that, we'll move into new business. Is there any new business to come before the council? Mr. Emmons.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Just a reminder that our July meeting in the West End neighborhood is canceled for this month. We will start again in August 15th, at our normal place at St. Babel's Church on the 15th of August. So again, there will be no meeting of the neighborhood West End area on July of this month, July 19th. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Volker.
Hi, thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Greg Swears for writing the article on the Mishawaka Historic Commission date-built plaques for people that own homes and residences, actually properties in Mishawaka that are older than 70 years. The Historic Commission has developed a program where the property owner can apply to purchase a metal, really nice-looking enameled plaque that lists the date of that the structure was built, and then has Historic Mishawaka on it. And it's just a kind of acknowledgement of the history of our city and the beautiful residential properties that we have that meet that criteria. So if you're interested in that, you can contact the Historic Preservation Commission or the Planning Department in the city of Mishawaka. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you and the other members of the Historic Preservation Commission for a job well done. Any other new business? Ms. Hahn?
On behalf of the Mishawaka Business Association, they are having workshops every Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. at the Penn Harris Mishawaka Library that are focused on entrepreneurs, business owners, startups, where they can reconnect, they can connect with other resources and mentors in the area and help to get them started in their business journey. That's every Wednesday at the library at 9 a.m.
Thank you. Other new business? If there is no other new business to come before the council, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
We're adjourned. Thank you, folks.